and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now call this regular meeting of the Board of Moffat County Commissioners to order on Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. And Chair would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And Chair would move to approve the consent agenda, items A through L, as presented. Okay, motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, that'll put us to public comment. If anyone has any public comment that they would like to share with us that's not on our agenda today, now is your opportunity to come up and share that with us. Hearing none, we'll move on. Does anyone have any general discussion?
Oh, no. No, this week we're going to the energy symposium or whatever.
Yep. And I'll just share that we did submit as Colorado counties, Western and Southern, the RFI for the full life cycle nuclear campus. And that did also garner in Colorado's submission a letter of support from the governor. So that is with the Department of Energy. That's a collaborative discussion on what the Colorado counties have to offer if we can go further in those discussions, but it doesn't commit to anything and there's no commission to siting or any one part of that life cycle. So that has been submitted. And I think that's all I have. So we can move on. We do have a public hearing at 8:45. Candace, can we get the airport knocked out? So we'll move to staff reports. Candace Miller for the airport.
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
The airport and the county owns a large hangar that we go out to bid every 3 years for. We went out to bid on March 18th, ran legal publications on the 18th and 25th, and opened the single bid we received for that on April 2nd. The bid for that hangar lease came from the Moffat County Hangar Group, who has had that lease for the last, handful of lease terms. So they submitted their bid for equal to the current rate that they're paying now, which is $780 per month. And that is for a 3-year starting May 1st and through 29. So I'm making the recommendation to you today to accept their bid proposal and sign the hangar lease so we can get that over to them by May 1st. In that hangar group, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. It is a group of individuals. I believe we currently have at least 3 active pilots in there, and then a couple other people who share in that rental space with their aircraft that they're not flying all the time, but we have at least 5 to 6 planes that utilize that hangar.
Is that hangar group a like an LLC?
It's an LLC.
Okay,
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
yeah.
It was just a bunch of local pilots who came together to form that group, and then they started going out to bid for this hangar, and they've had it for probably the last 5 or 6 3-year contracts. So
Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the lease to Moffat County or Moffat Hangar Group.
motion. Do I have a second?
Is that all? I thought it was two parts of this. Is it not? Or am I reading it wrong?
Approve the bid recommendation first and then do the lease.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You want to do that? Well, then I will recuse that motion and I will make a motion that we go off of what's been presented today to the recommendation for the hangar lease.
Second.
Okay, motion is second. I'll just state that bid was for $780 a month, $9,360 a year. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And the lease?
Now I'll make a motion for the lease approval.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Candace.
We're at 8:36. Todd, do we have time before the public hearing at 8:45 to do your? Okay. All right, Office of Emergency Management, Todd Wheeler and County Attorney Max Salazar for Fire Restriction Ordinance 2026-0414, first reading. Morning.
Morning. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
So the county attorney and I, and the sheriff have sat down and reviewed the current fire restriction ordinance that we have in place. We discovered some discrepancies over the last few years and then also some additions we would like to make to the current ordinance. Primarily, the things that we're going to start allowing is like the pellet grills, since they had been banned for so many years. Put that back in the ordinance, since they do not emit sparks and are somewhat considered like a propane type grill. But also we asked that some changes be made to the fact that there would be no burning when there was a red flag or fire weather watch day issued by the National Weather Service. It would automatically be a fire restriction day. This would help, or what we have shown over the past few years is our highest number of fires and largest fires have occurred on those fire weather watch days, red flag days, and have expended our resources the most. So this would automatically put in a fire restriction just for that day. It would be up to the landowner to call in or review the National Weather Service's website or call in and confirm that that there is a red flag warning or a fire weather watch. It would also require that anytime a burn is conducted, whether it be a trash burn, an open fire, an agricultural burn, that they must call in to dispatch to notify us. We have been spending a lot of resources responding to fires that we were not aware of, that were just controlled burns, and spending a lot of people's time and a lot of county money just for response alone. So this will help eliminate some of that, hopefully all of it. So I think that's all I have.
The other big thing that this adds is stage 3 fire restrictions. So previously we just had stage 1 and stage 2. How those are defined is going to be the same going forward. We've literally copied and pasted everything from what was in the previous resolution. However, with stage 3, what that means is that certain areas would be restricted to be able to go into altogether. That would be a decision that's up to the Board of County Commissioners. It's not something that the fire warden or Todd would be able to make unilaterally. If that was something that was deemed necessary, I think what we would do is call a special meeting, have that discussion, have that vote, and then there would literally be an area that would be restricted for people to not be able to go in whatsoever. So that's new as well. Just briefly, kind of about the process for implementing this ordinance. Today is the first reading, so it's just introducing the ordinance and sort of what it's about. In, at the next meeting, we'll be conducting a public hearing and a second reading. At that point, the public will be able to have their public comments and give any input that they see necessary. In addition to that, we're going to be publishing this in the newspaper. That has to be done 10 days before the public hearing. So I think as soon as we get approval today, we'll probably be doing that publication. And then once the second reading is approved, at that point, the idea would be that it would be implemented at that point, right?
That was my understanding.
And that is because we, and Todd mainly has deemed this to be an emergency type of situation. I don't know if you want to expound on kind of the conditions, I guess.
Yeah, I
that we're
mean,
dealing with this year.
you look outside today and we've had the best weather we've had in a month and a half. If it'll continue, that'll be great. But the anticipated forecast is right now we are in an extreme drought in this area and have been for about the last 3 weeks, and no sign of it lifting or getting any better. And in fact, this is the lowest it has ever been. Looking at the water reports just yesterday, the river flows are comparable right now as to what they would be in August. And with no signs of increase, even though this little bit of moisture we're getting yesterday, today, it's not going to be enough to bring these rivers up. They are talking about an El Nino, super El Nino later this year, but it's kind of misleading for the fact that it will be later this year, not this summer. It will be after August, after the fire season, or our typical fire season, although our fire season has now went from typically end of June through end of August. It has now moved from 1st of May through end of October into November.
With the red flag warnings, is that something that the Sheriff's Office PIO will attempt to put on Facebook as well?
It'll be on Facebook, it'll be on Crime Watch, it'll be on the county's website, it will be published all over. Plus we'll also go out on the Lee Moffett Alerts app. Anytime anybody that's signed up for that, they'll get immediate notification for red flag or fire weather watches. And it's on daily news.
Right. Just like a consistent place for them to go and find that, and maybe adding the information of who to call to notify when they are burning.
It'll be posted in multiple places. It already is. We've done that for years.
For it. Perfect. Any other questions? Okay. What's the board's pleasure?
Chair, I'll make a motion to approve fire restriction ordinance 2026-0414, first reading.
Okay.
Second.
All right. A motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
1 minute spare.
I'm not going to recess. We'll just wait a half a second and I'll start reading. In and out, in and out. So let the record show that today's posted public hearing regarding the following: S 2603 Baker Minor Subdivision Final and C 2601 Rocky Mountain Happy Paws Conditional Use Application has been noticed in the following way. Letters were sent to adjacent landowners. Information was posted on the county website. Legal ads were run 14 days prior to the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Once the public hearing's been declared open, I will ask Candace Miller, Planning and Zoning Coordinator, to present to the BOCC the request as submitted. Once the presentation is complete, the commissioners may ask questions or make comments. I will then ask the audience if there's anyone who wants to testify either for or against. Any citizen of Moffett County may testify once the public hearing has been declared and all information has been presented. For those who want to testify, you'll be asked to approach the commissioners, state your name for the record, and you'll be given 3 minutes to present your testimony either for or against. Erin Miller will be the timekeeper today, and she will notify the BOCC and the speaker that 20 seconds remain before your time is up. No decisions will be made during the public hearing. This is an opportunity for any of you to provide testimony in favor of or in opposition of the proposed request. The commissioners have the option of asking questions or answering questions related to the topic during the hearing process. Once all testimony has been heard and the public hearing will be declared closed, and we will go back to regular session. I will then refer back to the board for discussion and a decision on said proposal. With that said, I will declare this public hearing open, and prior to asking Candace to come up, I have been instructed to notify of ex parte communication and read that into the record. So, oh, nope, it's not for the Baker Minor. So I will rescind that notification, and we'll do the Baker Minor first. Thanks, Candace. S2603 Baker Minor subdivision.
So we had the Baker Minor subdivision presented to the planning board on March 4th. The board voted 5-0 to recommend approval of that subdivision. A reminder, that is a parcel of land owned by Shane Baker. It's 50.70 acres. He's dividing it into 2 equal lots of 27.34. At that sketch prelim, the labeling of those lots was not accurate, so we did recommend approval with the correction of those lots. And it came, I have the subdivision plat and also the Mylar in my office, which I'll bring over with the corrected labeling on those 2 parcels. I did have a conversation with Mr. Baker following our meeting on the sketch prelim. There was some concerns about the easement and access and how he plans to build that road. He assured me that he will stay within the 60-foot easement that was platted to access his parcel through the Harvey Minor lots. And then obviously work with the landowner should he, to make notice of, when he's starting work and how it might affect them or, anything like that. But he would stay within that 60-foot easement to the property. And so the board reviewed the final application with those corrections at the April 1st meeting and voted 4-0 to make a recommendation of approval for the final.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Nope.
Okay, so I'll now open it up if there's anyone in the audience who wants to testify either for or against the S2603 Baker Minor subdivision final. One more time, anyone like to testify for or against the Baker Minor subdivision? Hearing none, I will declare this public hearing closed and refer back to my fellow commissioners.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve S-26-03 Baker Minor subdivision final.
Okay,
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. And now I will declare us back into the public hearing for C2601 Rocky Mountain Happy Paws conditional use application. And now I will read into the record ex parte communication. On January 28th, Samantha Pierce reached out to me via Facebook Messenger, or text, I guess. Sorry. And I just texted back that I was in a Zoom for much of the day, what was up. And she stated, I wanted to talk about the dog boarding facility that's now my neighbor and wanted to make sure you had a complete understanding of what's happening. She's supposedly applying for a conditional use permit and should be in front of you in March if she gets an application. I stated if she submits an application, you will be able to come in and talk in front of the planning board as well. She stated she's planning to attend both the planning and BOCC meetings and will also submit a written letter along with photographs. My concern is whether the full scope of the nuisance will be adequately understood. I very much consider myself a live and let live neighbor. However, when I cannot sit in my backyard and have a normal conversation with my farrier, open my windows in the spring and summer, or ride in my arena due to 10 or more dogs barking, it becomes a significant issue. I do want to note that the general vibe I've perceived from the county has sometimes been that people should not be told what they can or cannot do with their own property. Respectfully, that is precisely the proposed purpose of the conditional use process. A dog kennel is not used by right on our properties, and the board must consider whether the proposed use constitutes a nuisance, diminishes surrounding property owners' ability to enjoy their properties. I also have a number of, sorry, I had to move to the next screen and find my place. I also have a number of neighboring property owners who are planning to attend and submit written comments if they are unable to present in person. I stated that's the right way to go about it. I totally understand. We hear the vet's dogs for hours on end. She says, I also want to ensure that the issue at hand remains focused on land use compatibility and impacts to neighboring properties and not influenced by personal relationships or community involvement by the applicant. I stated, put that in your letter. She stated it is. I gave the thumbs up. I was reached out to again on February 23rd after the application had been made with some videos as well as the statement. I really want you to think about the amount of money and time I've put into improving my property. I've spent $6,000 just on dirt work to get my arena started, then installed a 240 by 160 pipe arena with gates, alleyways, and horse fencing around the property. That's tens of thousands of dollars invested for my own use and enjoyment. If this permit is approved, it means constant barking and disturbance with no real way for me to avoid it. We already hear the dogs in the colder months, and it will only get worse in the summer. I stated, Sam, as I said before, you have to include this information in your testimony at the public hearing. Only sending it to me to consider for outside of the hearing is ex parte communication, and it's inappropriate. She stated, I understand that all substantive information must be presented on the public record and the hearing at the hearing, and I will do so. My intent is in sharing this was not to seek consideration outside the process, but to ensure clarity regarding the ongoing impacts we are experiencing. And the county attorney will have copies of that as well. Okay, Candace?
Oh, I would show as well that just that I was reached out to it as well, but it didn't go into any of that detail. We had one little quick phone call. I didn't receive any of those other messages. It was just John reached out to me and I talked to them for about 5 or 10 minutes. That was it.
Okay.
Just so the record shows.
So obviously you were sent a large packet of information, which included the application as well as my case timeline summary. In addition to preliminary operation and mitigation plan that was sent to the applicant. And then the information that they came back with. Your packet also included all of the letters of support as well as all of the letters of opposition. And most of those letters were received via email, and a couple of them were hand delivered at our first hearing. So just a quick background on the case timeline. So on January 19th, I received a call regarding a potential business. The inquiry was to whether or not they had a conditional use on file. On January 21st, after some review, made the final determination that there was not a conditional use on file for that particular business. At which time a letter was mailed out to that business owner. On January 26th, the applicant or the addressee came in to meet with me in regard to the letter they received, and we discussed why there was a need for a conditional use, how it's drafted in our zoning regulations, that a kennel is one of the uses allowed in ag as a conditional use. She stated that she was unaware she needed it, but was fully willing to do whatever she needed to do to get that in. and correct the situation. On February 2nd, she came back with her completed conditional use permit application. On February 10th, all of the letters were mailed out to adjacent property owners, and then legal notices were posted on February 19th and 25th. And then the application was on the March 4th agenda to review. Typically, conditional use are a one-meeting event. However, during the conversation of that meeting, there was, a pretty across-the-board consensus of the concerns surrounding that property, and then any of the mitigation methods in which they might use. And so the board made the request to the applicant to come back with a short-term and long-term plan of how they intend to mitigate those concerns. And so we tabled the application until the April 1st meeting. Between that time frame, I received an email outlining, which is in your packet, their intent for long-term, as well as, I'm sorry, that was actually a printout. Then I received an email on what they had done short-term with some photos, some black mesh that they had put up for maybe some visual barrier, and then they've bought some soundboard, foam board to put inside the kennels to help mitigate some of the sound, but really clearly spelled out that they were looking to, majority of the investment would be in the more long-term for the mitigation. So all of that is in your packet. When the initial application, or the application was sent out to my board, so the packet of all the information, in the case timeline, so I noted for my board that there were 20 letters of support, as well as a hand-delivered section of the Colorado regulations on boarding kennels by Ed Kerchek, which he didn't say much. He just handed that to me, and it really just was outlining of the state regulations for boarding kennels, which was also included in the packet. My board packet was mailed out to my board on the 24th. And after the board packet was sent to the board, I received 4 letters of opposition. At which time, when I received those, they were forwarded on to the board for review prior to the next hearing. Let's see here. In addition, two additional letters were handed in person at that initial meeting of opposition. Those were directly handed to the board, which they took some time at the start of the meeting to read through those, handing them down the line, and those are also in the file. So in the review of what was provided back to the board, or following that first meeting, in the tabling, the decision for to table and ask that they come back, I sent the applicant a preliminary operation and mitigation plan, kind of just reiterating what it is we're looking for, asking them to provide any kind of drawings or supporting documentation for any new buildings or structures, to include the placement and orientation construction of enclosed or insulated kennel facilities, just really kind of outlining what their plan was. And then also the visual screening and sound mitigation measures. So making some recommendations of things that they may consider when coming up with those plans. And then also a section of ongoing review, which included some landscaping. It also included notes that all dogs on property, including the operator's personal dog, shall be included in the evaluation of noise mitigation measures. And the county shall conduct periodic reviews of inspection or inspections to verify operational and mitigation measures have been completed. Adjustments to operational practices, facility layout, or mitigation strategies shall be made as necessary in response to complaints, observed impacts, or changes in scale of business. And that the county may require additional mitigation measures or operational adjustments if ongoing reviews indicate that noise or other impacts are inadequately managed. And this was just getting them going in the right direction to provide us what the board was looking for short-term and long-term plans for their business. So in that packet, you have what they came back with. So they have their long-term plan, and Kevin James is obviously working with Shelley also, but Kevin sent to me the email outlining what they had done. That included all of the photos of the fencing. They also made comment or provided photos of some decibel reading of the kennel. And then he also provided some maps, which are included in your packet as well, of how he intends to lay out the property. And so all of this information was provided to the board at our last meeting. During our last hearing, our first hearing, we did have a large turnout of both support and opposition for the conditional use application. Unfortunately, the second time around, it was a much smaller turnout on both sides, essentially. And we heard the same, and I think as you read those letters as you read those letters of support and opposition, the consensus on both sides, they're all very similar in the support as well as the opposition. And so during our final hearing, it was very clear that the main concerns are surrounding the approval or denial of a conditional use based off of the zoning regulations and how those are drafted. And so I have those provided to you in your packet. And so within that, within the zoning regulations, so section 505, zoning violations, section 405.3 is conditional uses, states that the listed uses are permitted in the district in which they are enumerated, provided that the conditional use application has been approved and the permittee continues to abide by the conditions specified in the application. The approved application shall list those conditions and requirements determined to be necessary to protect the health and safety and welfare of the inhabitants of the area of the county. The Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners shall consider the following in making the determination of approving or denying a conditional use application: the compatibility with existing uses in the area, physical separation from similar or dissimilar uses on the same property, impact to traffic volume and safety, impact to utilities or sanitary facilities, impact upon the established character of the neighborhood or zone district, conformance with the property development standards of the district, production of offensive noise, vibration, smoke, dust, odor, heat, glare, or unsightly aspect at or beyond the property line, interference with an airport approach, or scarring of the land or soil, which could leave denuded slopes, soil piles, holes or pits, or ruined areas of natural beauty without the recourse to reclaim of a reclamation plan and a performance bond sufficient to guarantee reclamation of the land. So the denial of a conditional use application should be based upon the finding that one or more of the foregoing concerns constitute a significant adverse effect and cannot reasonably be mitigated by a specific condition, restriction, or requirement. And then I will also note that last year we made the changes so that the application typically traveled with the land, or a conditional use would travel with the land. It now travels with the business because, if somebody takes over and starts, they need to understand the conditions of that approval in order to carry on with that application on that property. So I will state that the compatibility with existing uses in the area, ag is the only zone in the county that allows for the use even conditional for a kennel. There was some comments about the commercial nature of the business. Their current kennel facility is, I wouldn't necessarily say it stands out from anything in the area. I mean, it's, even the plans for growth, we discussed at the last meeting wouldn't be necessarily commercial in appearance. Not a large purple building with lights in a parking lot and public space, public parking. She doesn't have, so the impact to traffic and volume and safety. The board asked a lot of questions in regard to how people get their dogs to her facility. She operates on a schedule where she takes the dogs in at her retail spot in town, and she transports the dogs, so she doesn't have a lot of people coming to and from the property for the drop off and pickup of their animals. The physical separation from similar to similar uses on the same property. It's an ag property. They have other animals, horses, and I don't know, however, they have other ag related animals on the property. The impacts to utilities and sanitary, I mean, they're not drawing much more power. They do have a well on the property that they do not utilize. They haul water. I don't think that they're using much more than, what they're permitted for. However, they have had communications with DWR in regard to their use for the well, which they don't currently use, and then they haul. So the impact on the established character of the neighborhood or zone district, again, ag is the only area. It was expressed numerous times that, the commercial in nature appearance would not be acceptable, and that what they would build would blend in with the surrounding area as far as the colors, size, shape, those types of things, that it's not going to be a standout commercial facility. Production of noise or any disturbance beyond the property line is kind of a difficult one, because somebody starts their loud truck or their lawnmower, or, you can hear that. That's a really hard one, because you're in the outdoors and you can kind of hear what's going on for a mile around your house, so, but they did work to address some of those concerns, even in their short-term plan for the sound. And then the visual mitigation, trying to keep the dogs from being able to see the road with the black mesh on the fence. And then the soundproofing that they plan to install inside of the kennels to alleviate. And again, they did reiterate to me that the investment that they've made into mitigating those concerns today is small relative to what they would plan for their long-term plans for the facility. And I mean, those were the main areas that I believe were covered in all of the expressed opposition. And so the board did review all of those things, and in consideration of all of the written opposition, as well as the board's request for the short-term and long-term plan, the board agreed and drafted a list of conditions, which was provided to you in your packet. So the board voted to recommend approval with the list of conditions, that general compliance, the county, the use shall comply with all applicable Moffett County zoning regulations. The facility shall comply with International Property Maintenance Code as adopted by the county. The applicant shall obtain and maintain all required local, state, and federal permits and approvals. And then for the purpose of this permit, all standards and conditions shall apply to every dog located on the property at the time, not solely those formally boarded as a part of the business operation. And that was a discussion had with the applicant as well, that they understand the dogs on the property are also a part of, their business, and that they were working to mitigate with their own personal dogs as well. So Section 2 is state licensing. The operator shall obtain and maintain a valid license through the Colorado Department of Agricultural Pet Animal Care Facilities Act. Proof of their PACFA license shall be provided annually to Moffett County. Outdoor play areas shall be located as far as practical from adjacent residences. Repeat documented noise complaints may trigger additional mitigation requirements, review and possible revocation of the CUP. Visual screening and site design. The facility shall be screened from adjacent properties and public right-of-ways to the maximum extent reasonably possible, using a combination of landscaping, fencing, berms, or other visual barriers. All structures shall be designed to be compatible with surrounding areas in terms of scale, material, and color. Sanitation and waste. Animal waste shall be collected daily and disposed of in a sanitary manner consistent with the state and local requirements. Regulations, and odor control measures shall be implemented to prevent off-site impacts. Animal welfare and containment. I don't know why my first line is missing here, but fencing shall be maintained to prevent escape. The facility shall operate in compliance with PACFA standards for space requirements, capacity, ventilation, sanitation, veterinary access. Inspections and compliance. The property may be subject to periodic inspection by Moffett County staff. Failure to comply with conditions may result in enforcement action, including the revocation of the CUP. Complaint resolution. The operator shall maintain a log of complaints related to noise, odor, or other impacts. Any complaints received by the county shall be communicated to the operator in a timely fashion. The log shall be made available to the county upon request, and the operator shall make reasonable efforts to resolve complaints promptly. The application is not transferable. It does not transfer to a new owner or operator without the county review or approval. The CUP may be reviewed at any time if it's determined that there's issues. Some of my lines did not print out here. The uses create a nuisance or hazard to public health, safety, or welfare. The county reserves the right to impose additional conditions or revoke the permit following a public process. And then prior to any building, so talking long-term, as presented by the applicant, they are to meet with the county prior to the issuance. So we'd have basically another hearing before the Planning Commission prior to the issuance of any building permit for structures associated with the approved use. The applicant shall submit a final site and building plan to Moffett County for review. The submitted plan shall demonstrate compliance with the conditions, all of the conditions of this conditional use permit, including but not limited to noise mitigation measures, site layout and setbacks, visual screening, waste management and sanitation provisions, and animal containment and facility design. The land use administrator or designee shall review the submitted plans to verify consistency with the approval. If the submitted plans are found to be inconsistent with the approved conditional use permit or its conditions, the application shall be referred back to the planning board for further review and approval prior to issuance of any building permits. And no building permits shall be issued until compliance with this review have happened. And so I will add that the Section 2 review the application prior to building came from the applicant. And so the board agreed that building in all of these measures and our conditions, which our board, being an advisory board, we build our list of conditions based off of understanding the concerns of the opposition. And so I believe that they fairly represent, the conditions fairly represent the concerns of the opposition that was expressed both via written, emailed complaints or letters of opposition, as well as what was hand delivered to the board for review.
I have two questions for you, Candace.
Mhm.
Or three, actually. What was the vote? What? All in favor, one opposed, seven opposed, what was?
So our board, first go around, we had a full board.
The last one, right?
Last one, we were one short, so we had 4 board members. Initially, when the very first go around, it was 3-1. She was slightly on the fence. I questioned, what, she had some concerns about capacity. And so we questioned whether or not, so there's state regulations from PACFA and how a facility, how many animals you can have in a facility it's a ratio of supervisors to animals. And so PACFA kind of dictates those rules and regulations around capacity. And so I inquired with that board member on whether or not making sure that our conditions state that she has to follow PACFA requirements for capacity, and her vote was then yes. It was an aye. So it was a 4-0 vote to recommend with the conditions as presented, plus making sure that we have the PACFA standards for capacity, as well as we added the section for another meeting prior to building any of the long-term goals for them.
Okay. Second, I read in there that, or you read that you're gonna give them with the county, I don't know who's gonna be doing this. It can go and inspect their facility. We don't have an inspector that way, I don't think, and so I'm curious of how that's gonna work and how many days' notice are we giving them prior to doing that? Because, even if you have a landlord in there, you can't just walk in and be like, hey, I'm showed up, I'm checking out my facility, my house, even though there's
Right.
ample time. So I didn't hear any in there,
So
how many days' notice and all that, and who's doing
Yep,
it.
and there was no, so the inspection of that was, so we've provided them a list of conditions that they need to meet prior to long-term. So the review or inspection of the site to ensure that they're meeting the conditions is where that was built in there. So there was not necessarily a time frame built in, but I'm more than happy to add in a notice. It wouldn't be just a pop-in inspection. It would be like a
I think
coordinated.
if we're gonna do it clearly.
Yep.
We need to put that in there, because the way that reads, we could just show up and we don't even have
Yep.
an inspector of that on hire.
Yep, well, and really quickly, so that actually, the reference that I made on that was when I gave them the preliminary operation mitigation plan, that was like high level, here's the things that you could be looking at. Here's what we need to see from you, and here's what you could see from the county. Now, as far as the conditions, the actual conditions that apply don't state that we're just showing up to inspect.
Okay.
We want to ensure that they are meeting the conditions of this laid out for them, and then do another meeting prior to the construction of anything. And in here, so we're gonna, we shall inspect, I guess you could say inspect any complaints against the property if necessary.
I think we
Yeah.
read it. I'm just going off of what
Yeah.
was being read.
Yep.
So, and then my last question is, it just seemed like there was and I know we've agreed to them, so, they have agreed to them, but to me, there's a lot of conditions here. What other company do we do this to? What other company in Moffett County do we, say, you can have your business, but we're going to be able to inspect it. You got to follow all these lines. What other conditional permit that could we compare? We have outfitters that have 15, 20 hounds. There's no condition on there, and that they're using that, some for personal business, some for personal, some for business. They sit there and bark all day. Anytime a bird flies by, those dogs are barking. And I haven't heard a ton of complaints about that, because it's just like, oh, well, they're the houndsmen. They're an outfitter. It's not a big deal. And so I guess we have all these conditions, which I'm not against the conditions by no means. I think we should be good neighbors. But I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, what other people do we have the power to control? What about the trucking company that has 12 semi trucks that are starting up at 3 a.m? Do we go inspect them? Like, so I'm curious.
I will say that as we read this list of conditions, Kevin stated that none of those were unrealistic. That
Agreed.
they aren't already held to by the state for their licensing to run that kind of a kennel. So essentially, we're kind of just reiterating those things, right? And working to help them have a plan that lets them be a
For sure.
good neighbor with their business. Your points are very valid. There's probably a lot of things that need to be looked at and uses all around the county that, would we have longer lists of conditions had we dug in a little deeper on a lot of different properties in the county? Probably.
Right.
But again, I don't think they believed it was completely unfair, that it kind of aligned with
And I
what
don't think
they're
they're
already
unfair.
up against.
But I don't want the next neighbor to be going like, well, man, they got all these conditions now. We're going to go backwards on people that already have properties, that are already doing things. And so I'm just afraid that when we set a precedence that we can put all these into effect, anybody else that wants to start a business now goes, oh man, I don't want to start a business. They're going to get all in my business just to start a business, right? And so,
And to be fair, those are things that, as we're assessing all of those things under how we consider approval or denial of a conditional use, there should be some level of identifying. And again, conditions typically are, like I said, we draft our list of conditions based on the level of concern in the area. We might need to have just kind of a standard list of conditions that would apply in any case to ensure whether we have opposition or not. Because if you have nobody that lives around you and no one who has any concerns, we look at it and say, well, we don't have concerns. You've answered all of our questions. We're going to make a motion to approve, but no conditions come along with that. And that's probably, what historically what you've seen is that you don't see a long list of conditions. But if we have
concern.
standing opposition and there's a lot, obviously when you get into areas, County Road 30 is kind of a very mixed area where you have large, 60 acres, 30 acres. And this happens to be a section that was subdivided down to 5-acre parcels, which has a much larger impact when you have a bunch of 5 acres versus 30s next to each other. So you're going to see the conditions will likely be all over the place based on
Valid point.
concern.
One shoe doesn't fit everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think that's a valid point. I just want to be careful
Yeah.
that we don't set a precedence that we
Yeah, but you do have to have some kind of.
rules for sure. But I don't have to have rules if I wanted to take 5 acres and put 40 cows there and let them bawl all day.
Right.
You can't stop me from doing that.
Right.
But you can stop me from having 9 dogs that I'm boarding. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like I could put 5 acres as long as I'm feeding them all day and I got plenty of water. I could
Yeah.
put as many cows there and let them bawl all day long. And so I guess, you know what I mean? Like what's fair and what's not fair, I think is
Well, in a boarding facility, if you just own 9 dogs.
right. Yeah. I mean, right. So yeah, no, you guys did a great job. I'm not knocking that one bit. I think you guys did. I'm glad. We all want to be good neighbors. That's the hardest part about this type of thing for me personally is that when does my land, I hate telling somebody what they can do and can't do with their land. At the same time, when does your landowner rights trump my landowner rights?
Right.
And so
And
that's
the
biggest
board's position, and obviously is always to, give that high level review to the Board of County Commissioners to say that we've vetted the situation and understand what those concerns are. And again, your conditions are going to be very different each time. And I agree that, there's a line in how you dictate what somebody can and cannot do on their property. When it starts to affect other properties, that's when you look at how do you mitigate those concerns. And I think the board, worked to fairly, cover that with these list of conditions. And the applicant, working to bring that information and be very understanding with that list of conditions and even the suggestion of, additional review prior to building, so that we can ensure that they are, on track following and mitigating those concerns. So.
Yeah, lots of work put into it.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Do you have any other questions for
Any
me?
questions for Candace? Okay. I'll now open it up for anyone in the public who wants to testify for or against C 2601 Rocky Mountain Happy Paws conditional use application. You'll be given 3 minutes. Erin Miller will be our timekeeper. She'll notify the BOCC when the speaker has 20 seconds remaining before the time is up. We'll ask that anyone in the audience that would like to testify for or against, come up, state your name, and you'll be speaking to the commissioners with your concern. Morning.
My name is Samantha Harding. I am one of the neighboring property owners, and I'm here to oppose the conditional use permit. I want to focus on what's actually before you this morning. The applicant has discussed future improvements, including constructing a more enclosed facility. However, those improvements are not what exists today. What exists today is a chain link kennel directly facing my property with no meaningful sound mitigation in place. While I understand that any future building would require additional review, that does not address the impacts that are already occurring. The decision before you is whether this use as it currently exists meets the standards for approval and whether those impacts are reasonably mitigated. Right now, they are not. Nothing I have heard changes that the impacts are not reasonably mitigated today, and the conditions do not provide a measurable or enforceable way to ensure that they will be. The conditions also rely on repeated documented complaints that may trigger review. That language is vague and does not establish any objective standard for what level of noise is acceptable or when intervention will occur. Without clear, measurable thresholds, that condition does not function as mitigation. It places the burden entirely on surrounding property owners, and it places a reactive enforcement burden on the planning department, which operates with limited staffing. That is not a reliable or consistent mechanism for addressing ongoing impacts. The absence of additional nearby opposition should not be interpreted as agreement or lack of impact. Some neighboring properties are currently listed for sale, and those owners are avoiding conflict while actively marketing their homes. That silence should not be taken as evidence that the impacts do not exist or are acceptable. The decibel reading included in the application materials is not a representation of actual operating conditions. A single image showing a low reading taken at one point in time does not reflect what occurs during normal operations. Normal conversation is typically around 60 decibels. Barking dogs routinely exceed that level, often significantly. Without continuous or objective measurement, that type of snapshot can be misleading because it does not reflect actual conditions. This is exactly why clear, enforceable standards matter. Without them, there is no consistent way to evaluate or address the noise being generated. Your code requires that a use not produce offensive noise at or beyond the property line. That standard is not being met, and there is no enforceable condition in place to ensure that it will be. This decision cannot be based on what the operation might become. It has to be based on what it is today. This is not about opposing a business. It is about ensuring that a use with known impacts meets the standards required for approval. Approving this application based on future plans or vague conditions does not resolve the existing impacts. It allows them to continue without meaningful mitigation. For those reasons, I respectfully ask that you deny this application. I also want to address the hound dog comment that you made. So I included in my opposition letter that your resolution that you approved in 2024 exempts boarding facilities from nuisance dog barking complaints. If I had an issue with somebody's 20 hounds next door, regardless of whether they were used as a business or not, I would be able to complain. With the conditions as they're set right now, I cannot complain to the sheriff if I have an issue. I have to complain to the planning department. And as you said, we don't have a code enforcement officer. How are we going to enforce that? And like you said, I also don't want to be told what to do on my property, but why do your property owners trump my own? Why should I have to listen to up to 30 barking dogs because they chose to move next to me? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else want to testify for or against?
I'm Shelley Penn. I'm the owner of Rocky Mountain Happy Paws.
I'm Kevin James. I'll let her speak first.
I just come to you today. We bought that place for one reason, to build our kennels. Yvonne didn't tell me I needed a permit. She knew we were going to build our kennels. So for that fact, I apologized by not making the proper steps, and I was notified, but I was in her office. I got a letter on a Friday and I was there on a Monday to fix this problem. I have before you 53 pages of regulations I go by with PACFA. So I do ask that if this is approved, that you make any more regulations or things that we go by at a minimum, because I don't want it so much to where I can't even comply to stay on top of it. But this is my life. Without them kennels, I can't even afford to live there. And I'm not, her dogs bark as much as we hear her dogs bark too every single day. So to sit here and blame my dogs, we have also gone through as many things we can into trying to regulate even our personal dogs. But I'm not going to take their barking away, just like she hasn't taken her dog's barking away. And my neighboring neighbors aren't here for one fact. We speak to them every day, almost wave to them, talk to them. They tell us we don't have no problems. We own 10 acres. And everyone surrounding me that is borderline against my fence has never complained to me once, and they speak to us and see us each and every day. Sam doesn't border my property, and we can't see her house from our property. We do see her arena, but that's also, there's another 10 acres in between my 10 acres and her. And if it wasn't for her complaining, we probably wouldn't even be here today with this fact, because none of my neighbors have an issue with it. The people she got to comply are way down the road from us. My kennels gives back in every single way. Every part of my business, from my breeding to my boarding to my store, gives back to Moffat County. I also give back, if she brings up our personal dogs, my personal dogs I breed. I give a dog away to kids with cancer every litter. I give benefits to the veterans. I give benefits to service animals. I give back from everything I have because God has blessed me, and without my business, I wouldn't be able to do that. We donate breeding, we donate our kennels, everything to give back to Moffat County. I'm not trying to be a bad neighbor, but at the same time, I'm just trying to live. And we bought the property for one reason, for our kennels. Thank you. I just ask that you consider that, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Again, my name's Kevin James. I'm Shelley's partner, and primarily the one involved with building, constructing, remodeling, doing the things, property improvements at the residence. When we were notified of, when we received the letter from Candace, we immediately that weekend went to every single one of our neighbors for a mile and a half down the road, every single one of them. And every person, with the exception of the one person that complained this morning, Sam, told us, it's your property, your dogs. If we have a problem, we would have came and spoke to you ourselves. And then to reiterate the application for the conditional use, through the process of these hearings, it's come to my attention that there's no boarding kennels in ag specific land in Moffat County to even compare this to. And we would like to take that opportunity to show the county, to show Craig, that we are reasonable, that we are considerate. Our efforts dealing with dogs isn't having 30 dogs barking all day long. We board other people's dogs. So we try and we make every effort to make that experience for those dogs comfortable, calm, quiet. Feeding times, they'll raise, they're naturally, they know it's time to eat, they bark. But throughout the day, you don't have nuisance barking nonstop all day long, as has been reported. When we take the dogs out and play, sometimes we have some vocal dogs that get loud. But other than that, it's not to the degree that has been expressed to the board. And if it were, none of our neighbors would be here in support of us, especially the neighbor that lives the closest to us. The bottom line is we plan to build, but you know, Shelley has started a small business from nothing over the last 5 years, 6 years. And she's working to build something that's of value, an asset to this community. And in doing so, we plan on building buildings that will mitigate some of the internal barking during feeding times. And we plan to build buildings in accordance with the conditions that were put forth. And the reason that I said that these are common sense conditions with regard to this specifically is because not one of those things aren't already on our list of concerns. Now, if the board were to implement these conditions as they are, the bottom line is these are things that we intend to do anyway. Regulating them in a manner that could threaten the long-term sustainability of Shelley's business may create a problem if it impacts our potential to grow from today. So, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Anyone else want to testify for or against?
Good morning. Christine Schneider. I am their direct neighbor. I live maybe 50 foot from the property. I'm also the person that sold them the property. So rebuttal to Sam, she's not the only one that spent tens of thousands of dollars on her property out there. There are several people that have put upgrades to their homes. I was a little concerned in the beginning about being able to complain, like the ordinance says, if it's a kennel, the neighbors really won't have much to say about it because it's in the ordinance. So I would like possibly for that to maybe be a condition. As far as what they're doing now and what they plan on doing in the future, nobody can do it right away. We all know that. You have to save money. You have to we have to build our own properties. For them to be under the restriction that they have to have all this done right now, I think is not feasible by any means. Yes, the dogs do get out of control. I personally have lived on County Road 30 in one of these two houses for the last 25 years. Neighbors come, neighbors go, people have dogs. I've had cows, like you said about the bawling cows. I've had cows that have been just out of control. My neighbors, we've always had a good rapport. We've always talked to each other. We've always worked through it together. Like they stated, the other neighbors, since I've been out there for 25 years, I'm one of the longest ones that's been out there. All the neighbors I've talked to are concerned because it is new and people don't like change. But if they're willing to talk to Shelley and Kevin about what's going on, I think they would do what they could in any way, shape, or form to fix it or at least minimize it. I am all for your property. You do what you want to on your own property within reason. I mean, we almost had the mink farm out there and we were all in protest about the mink farm out there and it didn't happen. But there was nothing we were going to be able to do about it if it did happen. We were just going to have to work with them as neighbors. And yes, houses have gone up for sale. Houses have sold. Right now, currently in the last week, 2 other houses right there in the general area have gone up for sale. One of them was because their kids moved, so now they want to move where their children are. I don't think anybody's selling their house directly because Shelley and Kevin have moved in and plan on doing this boarding facility.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to testify for or against? Morning.
Good morning. My name's June O'Neill, and I'm a resident here of Craig. And first, I want to thank you all for the work that you do. I have worked for many years in nonprofit and in government, and I know that your job's extremely hard, so I want to appreciate what you do. I'm semi-retired, but I do work part-time in Steamboat Springs. My relationship with Shelley and her business started 5 years ago when we moved to Craig, and she has worked with my husband and I on our the dogs that we own, and we've developed a client relationship with her, but also it's evolved, and I now do some work with her. I transport dogs back and forth to Steamboat Springs because I travel there 4 times a week. And so I just want to speak to the integrity that that she brings to her business. And I keep a spreadsheet, and there are over 75 dogs that I transport, not all at the same time and not all in the same period of time, but over the course of a year, there are 75 different families that I personally am in touch with that board their dogs with Shelley. They give her their trust. These are all people who are extremely fond of her, and in all the contact that I have with her and her family, I know that she treats each and every dog as if it were her own. And she's an enormous asset, I believe, to the community. This is Steamboat money that comes into Craig because they trust her with their animals. And I grew up on a ranch in southern Arizona. And when I was growing up, and this is a long time ago because I'm an old lady now, our dogs were not pets. They weren't members of the family like they are now. People, they even call them fur babies. People treat their dogs differently, and as such, they really rely on people who can care for their animals in the same way that they do. And I can tell you, just dealing with these people, that they feel that with Happy Paws and with Shelley. Thank you. And so I just want to communicate my support for this incredible business that we have here in our community, and the support and the benefit that she brings to the community. And thanks so much for listening to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to testify for or against?
How are you, Tony?
Good.
Morning. Melody. Donald.
Lauren.
I'm Linda Pent. I'm Shelley's mom. Shelley just moved onto that property in December. So she took what she had from my place, is where she had the kennels before, out on County Road 7. I can guarantee you the dogs on County Road 7 were 100 feet from my house. And this barking and stuff, would they get excited when, I'm sorry, they love that girl more than they probably love their owners. When they would see her, or it would be feeding time, and they would bark. But inside of my house, I hardly heard them. And like I said, they were 100 feet away, But Shelley is PACA regulated by the state. Everything sings. And they call her one day and they visit the next day. And she has passed every time with flying colors. She has worked at this business. She brings people, June picks up people's dogs from Steamboat, but Steamboat brings dogs down. I was in her store one day and a dog came in, and the guy said, when he saw her storefront, he broke away from her, ran into the store. He was so happy to see Shelley. And I'm going, you're kidding, but they love her. The dogs, they do. The people love her. But she brings a little bit of business back down into Steamboat because the people pick up their dogs here. They come and they eat. They go to our Walmart instead of their Walmart because it's bigger. And I mean, they spend some time and they spend some funds here. But she, in time, will build a facility that Moffat County will be very proud of. I mean, yes, she just moved there, yes, and all this, but I mean, it takes time, it takes funds, and unless she wants to go to the bank and borrow more money, I don't think she does. I think she wants to do it as they go, slowly. But she will make the dogs help barrier the noise and everything else. So that's all I have to say. I had notes, but I erased them all. So you tried to get the old times.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else want to testify for or against? Morning.
Glenn Kelsey, I'm sorry. Glenn Kelsey from Craig. I just wanted to state that these people have the liberty to do these things elsewhere in the state, elsewhere in other states. We're all guaranteed certain liberties. This is one of those liberties, to pursue your business, to do exactly what you're done. As Justice McReynolds stated long ago in Pierce versus Society of Sisters, while this court has not attempted to define with exactness the liberty thus guaranteed, the term has received much consideration, and some of the included things have been definitely stated. Without doubt, it denotes not merely the freedom from bodily restraint, but also the right of the individual to contract, to engage in any of the common occupations of life, to acquire useful knowledge, to marry, establish a home, and bring up children to worship God according to the dictates of his own conscience, and generally enjoy those privileges long held at common law as essential to the orderly pursuit of happiness by free men. I feel that these people are trying to pursue their business in as legal a manner as they possibly can. I feel that anyone in this community should be given the same opportunities as everyone else in this state and every other state, as we're guaranteed the same privileges and immunities across this great nation. And some of those things have been denied through laws, through color of law, deprivation of rights under such things as Title 18, Section 241, 242, and 245 of the federal law, which actually deprive you of your rights as whoever, under color of any law, statute, ordinance, regulation, or custom willfully subjects any person in any state, territory, commonwealth, possession, or district to the deprivation of any rights, privileges, or immunities secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States. Their occupation, that's one of their rights that's protected. I just wanted to state that for the record, and a lot more things need to be considered on that, especially with the planning and zoning commissions, because a lot of things do deprive people of their rights. So I want the commission to take that into some sort of whatever you would call that.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to testify for or against? Anyone else want to testify for or against? Okay. Hearing no more, I will declare this portion of the hearing closed and will refer back to my fellow commissioners. Did you have any other questions for Candace?
Nope, I have no questions. It's spelled out.
Reiterate that the items that we included on the conditional use, we understood that there were some mitigation measures to be taken short-term, right? And they've made those steps with the black opaque fencing and then some soundboard that will go into the kennels. And the board understood that these conditions did not mean that they were going to start building their planned facility in a week, right? That we understand that that is a process that they will work through and build as they can build, and just ensuring that through all those processes that they are mitigating those concerns. So that's how we line those out, that, you know, you've got your short term, your in between, and then when you get your final long term is where they have the bigger picture, where they have fencing around 6 foot wood fencing around majority of the property, trees, the building, you know. So I just wanted to reiterate that we understand that while the mitigation, you know, when we have short-term, long-term, the in-between, that they are aware that from the planning perspective, you know, we're looking at, this is a use listed as a potential conditional use in ag, and that we're just addressing those concerns with those mitigation measures, and that's what's been communicated to the applicant. So.
Thanks, Ken.
I think I would just ask a question. If the commissioners were to approve the conditional use, do the conditions that are currently sitting in front of us, and there are a couple of lines of those that didn't print, for us.
Yeah, I don't know
Um,
why that.
Are we able to still have
Absolutely.
impact on the conditions that are approved if the application is approved?
Maybe this is for Max. Like, I don't know that, and Chip will hate this, but, I don't know why we can't change that ordinance that says that you can't make a phone call, change the wording in the ordinance that we passed in 2024. And then Chip can say, because then now Chip has like, hey, you know what? We've went and investigated this 4 times and you're still complaining and we found this. Now he can turn around and go to the person that's doing false complaints and say, hey, we've went 4 times and we have not found this guilty, and they have a little teeth both ways. They have teeth to go and say, you guys aren't doing what you said you were going to do. But at the same time, you're making false accusations. And so now here, so I don't know why we couldn't change that ordinance to put that, even their closest neighbor said, hey, why don't we could put that in? I don't know. Can we? I mean, we can pass this today if we choose, if the commissioners choose, and we could work on changing that ordinance that just says, hey, you can take that one line out of there that you can make an official complaint. Because, I mean, the planning department, that's not on there. That's not on there. So.
If we have set forth conditions, technically it is the planning department's responsibility to ensure that those conditions are met. So any conditional use that exists today, I have to hold those individuals
For
to
sure.
those conditions. And so if I were to receive a complaint that mitigation measures aren't working, that now there's 600 dogs out there, right? Like that, I can say, now you're in violation and we're going to review your use and figure out how additional mitigation measures go in. But you are correct. There should be some measures in which, if it is something, that they can still continue to go to the sheriff for those complaints, or not, because the way it's written, it does say that it is exempt once it's got a conditional use.
Yeah, and I mean, if I have a dog complaining at my house, I'm not calling you, right? I'm calling the sheriff. And so I think here, this is a different complaint than if they're following criteria of that. I mean, you're not the cops. And so your power is limited to just saying, oh, they can put up a sound wall and say, but what do you do with the complaint? So I just feel like we could change that ordinance.
That's.
Yeah.
So that was.
Yeah.
The neighbor can't complain because it's 30 house, I mean.
No. So that was my reason for the question, was if we could add something in there about that. But I think to Tony's point, changing the resolution, and also to the point that this is the only boarding facility in the county, it does. That is the boarding facility that I did a search through PACTA and all of the licensed facilities in the county to identify if there were any others, and there are no others that have state licensing. Are there other people operating? And then I did a business search and I couldn't find anyone who's operating something that they advertise as a business in the county. But yes, do we have people who technically should have state licensing? Because I think if you have anything more than 3 dogs that are in a kennel, you're supposed to have state licensing. Yeah. So yes, there's probably a lot of people who should have that. Unless they own them. Right. And then you're not licensed, but.
The one that's in town on Rose Street,
It's in city.
on Rock. Oh, it's in city limits, I get it, but like that ordinance, if they're complaining, when you call to complain that their dogs are barking, if somebody did,
Complaint to the city police.
you go to the city,
City's
right?
jurisdiction.
I mean,
Yeah, so bottom line though, is we do have the ability, if the chair or if the board's pleasure is to approve the conditional use, that we would still have some input into what the conditions could be in that. And then to your point, Tony, we still have the ability to change a resolution that was adopted, so. Any further discussion, or what is the board's pleasure?
Chair, I make a motion to approve C-26-01 Rocky Mountain Happy Paws conditional use application with the additions that need to be made.
second?
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
just like to add that as you make any changes to those conditions, just get them sent over to me and I'll send them on to the applicant.
Yeah, I think if we do that would be in conjunction with you.
Yeah.
Well, we're not making, we're just going on. The motion is just what was
What we
presented today.
presented
Yeah,
today,
we're
yeah.
not changing any of those conditions. What you presented today is the condition, right? Yeah, that's how I read the motion. And then if we chose to deal with the ordinance, we'd do that in a whole separate, separate. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
All right. And now we'll move on to the Office of Development Services, Neil Binder and County Attorney Max Salazar. Resolution 2026-48.
Good morning, commissioners.
Try to be.
Yep. All right, in front of you, you have the resolution opting out of the gray water control program and prohibiting the use of gray water within Moffat County. So this is all based off of the House Bill 24-1362, which basically threw the decision upon the county to either opt in on the bill passing a gray water ordinance that allowed that to happen within the county, or to opt out to not allow it within the county. So there's several other things that House Bill 24-1362 does go into, but this is specifically to the gray water control program. And as the county opting out of that, due to the pure reasoning that we just do not have the capacity to be able to regulate the gray water ordinance. We currently house one building commissioner, which he does the city and the county at this point. And he just does not have the capacity to be able to take care of that and regulate all of those issues that come along with the gray water control. If you'd like, I can read some of the different language that's in this. And so
What brought this up?
the state is forcing each county to either opt in or opt out.
Right, so what the statute does is it makes it legal across the state, and it kind of puts the onus on the county to either develop a program to enforce gray water permitting, looking at engineering specs, everything that you would do to insert one of these systems. Like Neil said, I don't think we have the resources to put together that program at this point. So it's kind of on us then to opt out, which what this resolution does, it makes it not allowable in Moffat County to install one of these systems.
Questions from the board?
Chair, I would make a motion to approve resolution 2026-48, resolution opting out of the gray water control program and prohibiting the use of gray water within Moffat County.
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, one. And when we say prohibited use, we're talking, you can't put it on your hay fields?
So it's incorporating a lot of different things. It's not
I was reading it, I started
that
thinking, maybe I
you
don't.
can't.
Actually.
You can't go out and do those things. It's more of in a house that this is really prohibiting, because those processes, that it's very detailed of what you have to do. There is consideration of out at
County Road
development.
22,
Yeah.
where the campers are.
Yep, as well as up in what is north of town, backside of Black Mountain, Wilderness Ranch. You've got all of these facilities out there where they're trying to save water. That doesn't say that you can't install these But it's on you to get the state to sign off on these things rather than the county signing off for that gray water. We just don't have
Capacity.
the means or capacity to be able to regulate those things. So.
Okay. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Road and Bridge Department, Bruce White, would you, Neil, will you grab Bob?
Yep.
Thank you. Morning.
Morning.
Thanks for sticking.
Last February and March, the Road and Bridge Department requested bids for a replacement snowplow sander water truck that we're cycling out the old one, bringing in a new one. We got one bid from Casper Peterbilt Incorporated. We bid it out as an option A and option B, a complete unit with everything we needed, or just a tractor. And then we use the components that we've got to build the tractor we need. So their option A, which is the only bid we got on that, is well over our budgeted amount. So we talked about it and we'd like to recommend the option B, which is cabin chassis only, and then we use our components and then our new components and build the truck that we need using our labor and stuff and making it affordable. So, let's see. We would like to recommend awarding the option B to Casper Peterbilt Inc. for the amount of $192,459.
Okay, any questions for Bruce?
No, I was just glad he had other components to add to it, because I was wondering how you just going to use a cabin chassis to do what you needed to do. No, I don't.
Me neither.
We would have done it.
We would have gotten it done.
We
What
would
we
have
do. Right, I am ready.
Chair, I make a motion to go with the recommended bid to Casper Peterbilt for the cabin chassis only for $192,459.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right,
Thanks, Bruce.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
no. We had that Zoom with the events and he wanted to sit in.
Oh.
Rachel, Department of Human Services, Resolution 2026-46, amending the Moffett County Handbook. Good morning.
Good morning.
Before we start, I'm
Yeah.
going to excuse myself from this portion of the meeting just due to
Conflict.
the potential conflict of interest on a business my wife started and not wanting to be in the middle of this.
Right.
All right.
You guys can adjourn without me.
Perfect. So the resolution that you guys have in front of you is the 2026-46, which would be to amend the employee handbook, which currently that states temporary employees shall be hired through the county designated temporary employment agency. And then also with this resolution, it would be, the request would be to resend 2 resolutions with that designate temporary employment, which would be Flint personnel. You know, just through reviewing this and the size of our county, reliance on a single temporary employment agency doesn't help provide sufficient workforce availability to meet all of our county needs. We have various positions that at times there's different skill sets or different needs that might need to happen. So it is highly suggested that we amend the handbook and then also resend the resolutions. I did reach out to Flint personnel because since I've been employed with the county for 3 years, we have not had a contract on file. We have just submitted work orders essentially to Flint. Those have came from my office, which those aren't always required, right? A lot of it is just having a conversation to request the needs of the temporary employment that we've needed through Flint. Or we have had managers go directly to Flint to arrange temporary hiring of employees, usually seasonal. I would like to request if we could make that amendment to the handbook and then also resend those two resolutions. I think it also definitely helps us. There are other temp hiring agencies close by. We have a couple here now in Craig, and then also Steamboat has some hiring agencies that can help meet our needs for what we're looking for with our size of our county as well and our departments.
Any questions for Rachel? No, I know it's a struggle sometimes to get, especially that temp staff.
It can be,
Not
yeah,
Create a position and not, but still create the assistance needed.
definitely, yeah, depending on what the job assignment is as well, or age requirements as well too.
Right. All right.
Okay, Chair, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2026-46, amendment to the Moffett County Employee Handbook, Chapter 3, effective April 14, 2026, and resolution to rescind designation of temporary employment agency.
Okay, second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries.
Perfect.
And
Thank you very much.
that does wrap up our business for today. Our next meeting will be Tuesday, April 28th, right here.